voice when he so flippantly and comfortably talked about me. I said this on my way back. Hi, Kody. Just wanted to follow up from the text I sent a couple weeks ago. Just wanted to let you know that I had a conversation with the leadership in Utah today, and the official release was granted. When Kody and I...
The internet doesn't often stop in its tracks, but when Tony Pydron's private clip hit the public, that's exactly what happened. Fans who had followed the Brown family for more than a decade suddenly had their jaws on the floor. What was supposed to be a behind-the-scenes glimpse of a quirky, complicated polygamist family turned into something darker, a moment that forced everyone to look at Kody Brown in a way they never had before. This wasn't harmless bickering. It wasn't a dad struggling to keep order in a big household. What Tony captured showed Kody's behavior toward Mykelti in a way that fans described as creepy, controlling, and deeply unsettling. The kind of moment that confirmed suspicions people had whispered about for years but had never been laid out so clearly. Hi friends, I'm Sarah, and this is TLC Sister Wives Daily. If you're someone who's tired of the polished version TLC feeds us and you want the truth about what's really going on in this family, you're in the right place. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a single update, and drop a comment telling me how you felt when you first heard about Tony's recording. Were you shocked, or did it feel like proof of what you already suspected all along? The thing about this leak is that it wasn't just another headline. It hit differently because of where it came from. Tony Pydron has never been the loudest voice in the Brown family story. For years, he's been that quiet presence, married to Mykelti, doing his own thing, not looking for fame. So when his voice broke through, raw and unpolished, people paid attention. What he described wasn't a random outburst or a one-off argument. It sounded like a man who had been sitting with what he'd seen and felt for a long time, finally putting words to it. And let's be honest, this family has always carried two sides: the smiling, chaotic, laughter-filled moments and tease on TV, and the silences, the uncomfortable looks, the things you only noticed if you were really paying attention. The clip Tony recorded cracked those two worlds wide open. Suddenly, fans weren't just relying on speculation or reading between the lines of edited episodes. They were hearing confirmation that behind Kody's big personality and TLC's family-friendly edit, there was a darker pattern of control and dismissal that affected the women, and especially the daughters. The fallout was immediate. Reddit threads lit up within hours. YouTube channels were dissecting every second of the clip, and longtime viewers started rewatching old episodes, pointing out scenes that now carried a much heavier weight. It was as if the curtain had finally been pulled back, and for the first time, people weren't seeing Kody as the overwhelmed dad of 18. They were seeing him as a man whose behavior had left scars on his wives and children. That's why this leak didn't just stir gossip. It shifted the entire conversation. It wasn't about whether the Browns could make plural marriage work anymore. It was about the very real consequences of Kody's control, the things his daughters endured, and how much had been hidden in plain sight. And that's where our story begins. For years, TLC packaged the Browns as the smiling poster family of polygamy. 18 kids, 4 wives, 1 husband, all managing the chaos of daily life with laughter and heart. The early episodes sold fans on that image. Family dinners spilling over with noise, kids running in and out of frame, and Kody at the center, cracking jokes and steering the ship. But what the cameras didn't show, or what they carefully clipped down to quirks, was the weight of control, favoritism, and dismissal simmering underneath. Take Isabel's prom night. On the surface, it should have been a sweet father-daughter moment. She was excited, hopeful, and ready to feel beautiful. But Kody couldn't leave it at that. Instead, he made comments about her dress, picking apart her choices in a way that didn't feel protective. It felt belittling. The cameras rolled as Isabel smiled through it, but you could see the flicker of discomfort in her eyes. A milestone that should have been about joy became another moment where his control seeped through. Then there's Gwendolyn. Fans still talk about the episode where she cut her hair short, a bold, self-expressive move for a teenage girl. Rather than celebrating her independence, Kody made a point of criticizing it, framing her choice as a rejection of what he thought she should be. For viewers, it was a passing comment, one line in a packed episode. But when you look back, it's clear that these weren't isolated moments. They were part of a pattern, Kody pushing back against any step his daughters took that strayed from the image he wanted them to maintain. And it wasn't just the daughters. Christine and Janelle time and again tried to voice their concerns about the way the family's finances were handled, about how the kids were being raised. about the glaring imbalance in attention between Robyn's kids and everyone else's. But instead of being heard, they were brushed off. Kody had a way of dismissing their worries as nagging, as drama, as ungratefulness. What the world saw was a man shrugging off conflict, but what his wives felt was erasure. Over the years, the Browns became masters of the double life. On television, they leaned into the brand: smiles, togetherness, endless family activities. In private, they were swallowing their pain, holding their tongues to protect the fragile balance that kept their world intact. The kids, especially the daughters, learned to laugh off the dismissive comments and accept the criticism as normal. The wives kept quiet, pushing their emotions down to keep the family together. But that's the thing about cracks. They don't stay hidden forever. Every clipped comment, every silenced concern, every unspoken hurt was another fracture, running through the Brown family foundation. And as Tony's leaked clip proved, once those cracks were exposed to the light, fans realized the perfect image they'd been sold was never real to begin with. Tony Padron was never meant to be center stage in the sister wives story. From the moment he married Mykelti, fans saw him as quirky, outspoken, even a little awkward at times. But what they didn't realize was how carefully he was watching everything around him. Unlike the wives and children who had grown up under Kody's dominance, Tony entered the family as both an insider and an outsider. He sat at the dinner table, he showed up for family events, but he wasn't bound by decades of conditioning to keep quiet. What Tony saw over time was impossible to ignore. He noticed how the daughters would stiffen when Kody walked into the room, the way Isabel and Gwendolyn shrank back whenever their father made comments about their choices. He saw Christine and Janelle, two strong women, get shut down mid-sentence, dismissed as if their concerns were inconveniences, rather than voices that mattered. To Tony, it wasn't just about disagreements. It was about a man who had built an entire family structure around control. But Tony isn't someone who thrives on confrontation. Instead, he carried those observations quietly, holding on to the heaviness he felt for his wife and her siblings. Recording his feelings wasn't about fame or exposure. It was his way of processing what he was living through. It was a personal release, a raw and unfiltered outpouring of everything he'd kept inside after watching the Browns operate behind the scenes. What he didn't expect was for that private moment to take on a life of its own. Somehow, some way, the recording slipped beyond his control. Maybe it was shared in confidence, maybe it was leaked by accident. But once it hit the public, it spread like wildfire. Fans who had long suspected Kody's darker side suddenly had proof, an outsider confirming what the wives and daughters had hinted at but never fully revealed. The clip wasn't polished, it wasn't staged, and that was what made it so powerful. It was raw, messy, and human, and it pulled the curtain back on the Brown family in a way TLC never could. Overnight, Tony's words became a bombshell, igniting conversations across social media, on fan forums, and even in the press. What started as a private act of release turned into the spark that exposed years of silenced pain, reshaping the sister wives' narrative forever. When Tony's private recording exploded into the public, it did more than expose Kody's behavior. It cracked open a door that the daughters had been pushing against for years. Suddenly, the silence that had defined their childhoods no longer felt unbreakable. Tony's words gave them permission, a spark that told them they weren't imagining things, they weren't exaggerating, and most importantly, they weren't alone. For Isabel, the memory of her prom night still lingered like a bruise. Fans will never forget that moment on camera when she tried on her prom dress, her face glowing with excitement, only to have Kody's comments chip away at her joy. He reduced her big milestone to a critique, making her feel small when she should have felt celebrated. After the leak, Isabel found the courage to revisit that moment, confirming what fans had long felt. Her father's words cut deeper than the cameras ever captured. Then there was Gwendolyn, whose haircut became a flashpoint for Kody's disapproval. What should have been an expression of independence, a young woman exploring her identity, was met with criticism instead of encouragement. For years, she carried that rejection quietly. But with Tony's words echoing the same truths she'd lived, Gwendolyn stepped forward, voicing what it felt like to grow up under a father whose love always seemed conditional. And they weren't alone. Other daughters began to confirm the patterns too. Stories of being dismissed, overlooked, or made to feel like they weren't measuring up. Each voice added weight to the others, weaving a tapestry of truth that fans could no longer ignore. Christine and Janelle rose up as shields for their daughters, protective and fierce. Christine in particular, who had endured years of emotional neglect herself, stood firmly beside Isabel and Gwendolyn, validating their pain instead of minimizing it. Janelle, steady as ever, reinforced that her children's experiences mattered, that their voices deserved to be heard without fear. And then there was Robyn, caught in a position that exposed the deepest fractures in the family. While Christine and Janelle embraced their daughter's truths, Robyn clung to defending Kody, trying to explain away his behavior, to soften the edges of words that were sharp and damaging. Her loyalty only deepened the divide, painting a stark contrast between the wives who chose their children's voices and the wife who chose to protect Kody's image. In this moment, the daughters became the truth tellers. They weren't just background characters in their father's story. They were survivors reclaiming their narrative after years of being silenced. Their voices rang out not with bitterness, but with honesty, and it was that honesty that finally broke the illusion of Kody's control. The moment Tony's recording leaked, the Sister Wives fandom exploded. What had started as whispers of Kody's favoritism and emotional control suddenly became undeniable, and fans weren't about to stay quiet. Twitter lit up with hashtags like #justice for the daughters and #Kody exposed, spreading like wildfire across Instagram, Reddit, and TikTok. Viewers began revisiting old episodes with new eyes, pulling clips of Kody dismissing Christine's concerns, mocking Gwendolyn's haircut, or belittling Isabel's prom dress. What once felt like awkward reality TV moments now looked like a chilling pattern. Petitions started circulating online, demanding TLC hold Kody accountable and shift the focus of the series away from protecting his image. Some fans even called for the show's cancellation unless the network acknowledged the harm being shown on screen. The noise grew so loud that sponsors began quietly distancing themselves, not wanting their brands tied to Kody's unraveling reputation. Behind the scenes, production leaks painted a clear picture. Kody had been effectively sidelined. While he wasn't formally removed, sources whispered about his suspension from key filming schedules and producers reworking entire storylines to center Christine, Janelle, and their children instead. The narrative had shifted, no longer Kody's plural marriage experiment, but the wives' journeys of healing, independence, and reclaiming their power. For fans who had spent years frustrated by TLC's glossy editing, it was vindication. At last, the truth was breaking through the carefully curated family image. The women and daughters weren't just side characters in Kody's empire. They were the heart of the story all along. Christine's world looks nothing like it did just a few short years ago. With David Woolley by her side, she radiates the kind of joy fans always hoped she would find. Their relationship isn't about performance or control. It's about partnership, laughter, and real love. For the first time in decades, Christine isn't shrinking herself to keep a man happy. She's living fully, boldly, and unapologetically. Janelle, too, has carved out a powerful path. Her resilience shines as she rebuilds her life piece by piece, determined to provide stability and freedom for her children. She's not defined by what she lost, but by what she's building. Financial independence, personal strength, and the space to finally make decisions on her own terms. Janelle represents survival turning into triumph, a woman who refused to let Kody's neglect dictate her future. And then there are the daughters, the voices once silenced who now refuse to be quiet. Isabel, who once fought so hard for her father's attention, is thriving as a nursing student, pouring her energy into helping others with a gentleness Kody never gave her. Gwendolyn has stepped into her own power, channeling her honesty into advocacy and speaking her truth openly, even when it stirs controversy. Together, they are proof that healing doesn't just mean escaping the past. It means transforming it into fuel for a stronger future. The solidarity between Christine, Janelle, and their children has become the heart of the story. No longer cast in the shadow of Kody's control, they are showing viewers what empowerment looks like after years of silence. It's not just survival, it's a new chapter defined by freedom, strength, and the courage to live authentically. It's almost unbelievable to think how one leaked clip, just a few raw words caught on tape, cracked open years of silence. For so long, the story was carefully managed, shaped to make Kody's experiment in polygamy look like a workable dream. But Tony Padron's moment of honesty became the spark that revealed what had been hidden in plain sight all along. The wives and daughters who once carried their pain quietly stepped into the light, refusing to let fear define them anymore. Christine, Janelle, and their children are no longer background characters in Kody's story. They are the story. Their voices, their strength, and their resilience have turned sister wives into something bigger than reality TV. It's no longer about holding a family together at any cost. It's about women and daughters reclaiming their agency in front of the entire world. And now I want to hear from you. Did you see this coming? Were the signs always there, or did this leak change? The way you look back at the show, share your thoughts in the comments below. I read them all, and this community is where the real conversation happens. I'm Sarah. Don't forget to hit subscribe.